Hello, horror lover. Are you ready for a long night of nightmares? Before we begin, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel, and especially leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to know. Click the like button, all of this because the summer heat beat down mercilessly as I trudged along the dusty shoulder of Highway 43. My feet ached in my worn-out sneakers, and my uniform clung to my sweat-soaked skin. I'd been walking for what felt like hours since leaving Mel's diner, where I'd just finished another grueling shift. "Come on, Lily," I muttered to myself, wiping the sweat from my brow. Just a few more miles. But who was I kidding? Home was still a good 20 miles away, and the sun was already dipping towards the horizon. I'd missed the last bus, and my piece of junk phone had died hours ago. With a resigned sigh, I stuck out my thumb, praying for a kind soul to offer me a ride. Car after car zoomed past, their drivers barely sparing me a glance. My hope dwindled with each passing minute. Just as I was about to give up and look for a safe spot to spend the night, a blue sedan slowed to a stop a few feet ahead of me. My heart raced with a mixture of relief and apprehension. Mom's words echoed in my head. "Never get in a car with a stranger, Lily, it's dangerous." But desperation won out over caution. I jogged up to the passenger side window as it rolled down. A woman in her late 40s smiled warmly at me. She had kind eyes and laugh lines around her mouth, reminding me of my favorite aunt. "You look like you could use a ride, sweetheart," she said, her voice gentle and concerned. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to get home to Millbrook. It's about 20 miles down the highway." "Oh, you poor thing, that's quite a walk. I'm headed that way myself." "Hop in, I'll give you a lift." Relief washed over me. "Thank you so much," I said, reaching for the door handle. "I really appreciate it." As I settled into the passenger seat, the woman introduced herself. "I'm Martha, by the way, Martha Kendrick." "I'm Lily," I replied, buckling my seatbelt. "Lily Thompson. Thanks again for stopping, Martha. I was starting to worry I'd be walking all night." Martha pulled back onto the highway, her eyes flicking between me and the road. "It's not safe for a young girl like you to be out here alone, Lily. Why on earth are you walking?" I sighed, embarrassment coloring my cheeks. "I work at Mel's Diner in Oak Ridge. Usually I catch the bus home, but I missed it today. My phone's dead, so I couldn't call for a ride." "Oh, you poor dear." Martha clucked sympathetically. "Your parents must be worried sick." A pang of guilt shot through me. "Yeah, they probably are. Mom's going to be so mad when I get home." As we drove, Martha asked me about my job, my family, and my plans for the future. Her interest seemed genuine, and I found myself relaxing as we chatted. The miles flew by, and I was starting to think my luck had finally turned around. Then my world shattered. A shrill alert pierced the car's quiet atmosphere, making me jump. Martha's phone, resting in a holder on the dashboard, lit up with an Amber Alert notification. My eyes widened as I read the message, my blood turning to ice in my veins. "Amber Alert. 16-year-old girl abducted in Oak Ridge. Suspect driving blue 2018 Hyundai Sonata, license plate HDK 4891. Last seen heading east on Highway 43." Time seemed to slow down as my gaze shifted from the phone to the car's interior. Blue sedan, Highway 43, east. With trembling fingers, I slowly turned my head to look at the license plate visible in the side mirror, HDK 4891. A wave of nausea hit me as the reality of my situation sank in. I was in the car, I was the abducted girl, and Martha was the abductor. My mind raced, searching for an explanation, a way out of this nightmare. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Martha had borrowed the car from someone else. Maybe... "Everything all right, Lily?" Martha's voice cut through my panicked thoughts. "You look a bit pale, sweetie." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm fine. Just a little carsick, I guess." Martha's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something dark passing over her face. "Are you sure? You seemed fine a moment ago." "Yeah, it just hit me suddenly. I lied, my heart pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. Do you think we could pull over for a minute? I could use some fresh air. Oh, I don't think that's necessary, Martha replied, her tone suddenly cooler. We're almost to Millbrook. You can wait until then, can't you, dear? The change in her demeanor sent chills down my spine. I knew then, without a doubt, that she was aware of the Amber Alert. She knew that I knew. And she had no intention of letting me go. Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to think, had to find a way out of this. My eyes darted around the car looking for anything I could use as a weapon or a means of escape. Actually, Martha, I said, fighting to keep my voice from shaking, I really don't feel well. I think I might throw up. Please, can we just stop for a moment? Martha's grip tightened on the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. I said, no, Lily. Now be a good girl and sit quietly. The last vestiges of her friendly facade had vanished, replaced by a cold, menacing presence. I felt like a mouse trapped in a cage with a hungry cat. In a desperate move, I lunged for the door handle, hoping to catch her off guard. But Martha was quicker. Her hand shot out, grabbing my arm in an iron grip and yanking me back into the seat. I wouldn't do that if I were you, sweetheart, she hissed, all pretense of kindness gone. We wouldn't want you to hurt yourself now, would we? Tears stung my eyes as the full horror of my situation hit me. Please, I begged, my voice breaking. Please let me go. I won't tell anyone, I swear. Just let me out of the car. Martha's laugh was cold and humorless. Oh, Lily. Sweet, naive Lily. You're not going anywhere. You're coming home with me where you belong. Where I belong, I repeated, confusion mixing with my fear. What are you talking about? My home is in Millbrook with my parents. Those people? Martha spat, disgust evident in her voice. They don't deserve you, Lily. They let you work that awful job, let you walk alone on the highway. I've been watching you for weeks, you know, waiting for the right moment. And now, you're finally mine. Her words sent a fresh wave of terror through me. This wasn't a random abduction. She had been stalking me, planning this. The realization made me feel sick. You're insane, I whispered, shrinking away from her as much as the seatbelt would allow. Martha's hand left the steering wheel, caressing my cheek in a perverse imitation of affection. I flinched away from her touch. You'll understand soon enough, my dear. We're going to be so happy together. You'll see. As she spoke, Martha pressed a button on the door, and I heard the ominous sound of the locks engaging. My last hope of escape vanished with that simple click. I turned to look out the window, tears streaming down my face as familiar landmarks whizzed by. We were passing Millbrook now, my home fading into the distance as Martha drove on into the gathering darkness. My mind raced with questions. Where was she taking me? What was she going to do to me? Would I ever see my family again? The uncertainty was almost as terrifying as the situation itself. As if reading my thoughts, Martha spoke again, her voice taking on an unsettling sing-song quality. Don't you worry your pretty little head, Lily. We're going somewhere special, somewhere safe, where no one will ever take you away from me. I closed my eyes, trying to block out her words, trying to wake up from this nightmare. But when I opened them again, nothing had changed. I was still trapped in a car with a madwoman, being driven to God knows where. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the trees, I sent up a silent prayer. Please, let someone find me. Please, don't let this be the end of my story. But as the miles stretched on and the night grew darker, hope seemed as distant as the stars twinkling coldly in the sky above. I was alone, afraid, and utterly at the mercy of the monster sitting beside me. And this was only the beginning of my ordeal. The hum of tires on asphalt filled the car, a monotonous soundtrack to my living nightmare. We'd been driving for hours, the familiar landscapes of my hometown long since replaced by unfamiliar territory. My eyes darted between the dark road ahead and Martha's profile, illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard. I shifted in my seat. wincing as my muscles protested. The seatbelt that once represented safety now felt like shackles. My fingers, which had been trembling since the moment I realized my predicament, now moved with renewed purpose towards my pocket. My phone. It was dead. But maybe... "What are you doing, Lily?" Martha's sharp voice cut through the silence, making me jump. I froze, my hand halfway to my pocket. I was just trying to get comfortable, I lied, my heart racing. Martha's eyes narrowed, flicking between me and the road. "Empty your pockets," she commanded, her tone leaving no room for argument. With shaking hands, I pulled out the contents of my pockets, a few crumpled bills, my house key, and my dead phone. Martha snatched the phone from my hand, tossing it into the back seat. "Nice try, sweetheart," she said, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "But you won't be calling anyone for help. It's just you and me now." Despair washed over me as I watched my last hope disappear into the darkness of the back seat. I slumped back, tears stinging my eyes. "Please," I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. "Please, just let me go. My parents, they must be so worried. They'll be looking for me." Martha's laugh was cold and humorless. "Oh, I'm counting on it, dear. The more they search, the sweeter it'll be when they never find you. You're mine now, Lily. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I turned away, pressing my forehead against the cool glass of the window. Outside, trees whizzed by in a dark blur. We were in the middle of nowhere, and I had no idea where we were headed. As the minutes ticked by, my mind raced, desperately seeking a way out. I thought about the self-defense class I'd taken last year. Could I overpower Martha? My eyes darted to the steering wheel. If I grabbed it, maybe I could force us off the road. But before I could act on my half-formed plan, Martha spoke again. "I know what you're thinking, Lily," she said, her voice eerily calm. "But I wouldn't try anything if I were you. You see this?" She held up a small device that looked like a garage door opener. "One press of this button, and the doors will lock completely. Another press and a lovely dose of sleeping gas will fill the car. I'd hate to use it, but I will if you force my hand. Do you understand?" I nodded mutely, my brief spark of defiance extinguished. Martha smiled, reaching over to pat my knee. I flinched at her touch. "Good girl. Now why don't you tell me about yourself? What do you like to do for fun?" The sudden shift to casual conversation was jarring. I stared at her in disbelief. You want to know about my hobbies? After you've kidnapped me?" Martha's expression hardened. "I'm trying to be nice, Lily. Don't make me regret it. Now, answer the question." Swallowing hard, I mumbled, I like to read. And draw sometimes." "Oh, that's wonderful," Martha exclaimed, her mood shifting again. "I love to read too. We'll have so much fun together, you'll see. I have a whole library at home." Home. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. Wherever this home was, I knew it wouldn't be the safe haven Martha was trying to paint it as. As if sensing my thoughts, Martha continued, "You're going to love it there, Lily. I've prepared a beautiful room just for you. Blue walls, a cozy bed, even a desk for your drawing. It'll be perfect." The way she spoke, as if she'd been planning this for a long time, made my skin crawl. How long have you been watching me?" I asked, dreading the answer. Martha's eyes lit up, as if she was delighted I'd asked. "Oh, for months now, sweetheart. I first saw you at that diner working so hard. You reminded me so much of my Sarah." Her voice trailed off, a look of pain flashing across her face before quickly disappearing. "But that doesn't matter now. You're here and we're going to be so happy together." I felt sick. This woman had been stalking me for months, planning to snatch me away from my life, my family. And for what? To replace someone named Sarah? Gathering my courage, I decided to try reasoning with her again. "Martha," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know you think you're helping me, but you're not. I have a family who loves me, friends who'll miss me. Please, if you really care about me, you'll let me go." For a moment, Martha's expression softened, and I dared to hope my words had gotten through to her. But then her face hardened once more. "Nice try, Lily," she said, her voice cold. "But I know what's best for you. Those people, they don't really love you. Not like I will. I'll give you everything you've ever wanted." "What I want is to go home," I cried, frustration and fear boiling over. "You can't just take someone and expect them to be happy about it." Martha's hand shot out, gripping my arm painfully. "That's enough," she snapped. "I've tried to be patient with you, Lily, but you're testing my limits. One more outburst like that, and I'll have to teach you some manners. Do you understand?" I nodded, biting my lip to keep from crying out. Martha relaxed her grip but didn't let go entirely. "Good," she said, her voice softening again. "Now, why don't you try to get some sleep? We still have a long drive ahead of us." Sleep? How could I possibly sleep in this situation? But as I opened my mouth to protest, I caught sight of the device in Martha's other hand, the one she'd threatened me with earlier. The message was clear: sleep, or be forced to sleep. Reluctantly, I leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes but remaining acutely aware of every movement, every sound. The hum of the engine, the occasional bump in the road, Martha's steady breathing beside me. As I feigned sleep, my mind whirred with possibilities. There had to be a way out of this. Maybe when we stopped for gas? But would Martha even let me out of the car? And even if she did, where would I run to in the middle of nowhere? Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time seemed to have lost all meaning. I must have dozed off at some point because I was jolted awake by the car coming to a stop. My eyes flew open, hope surging through me. Had we been pulled over? But no. We were at a gas station, the harsh fluorescent lights illuminating the empty forecourt. "Stay put," Martha warned as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "Remember what I said about trying anything." She got out of the car, locking the doors behind her. I watched as she began to pump gas, my mind racing. This was my chance. But how? The doors were locked, and even if I could open them, Martha would see me immediately. Then I spotted it. A trucker was walking towards the store, his big rig parked on the other side of the lot. If I could just get his attention. Frantically, I began to bang on the window, mouthing, "Help me," over and over. The trucker paused, looking in my direction with a confused expression. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw recognition dawn on his face. He took a step towards the car, reaching for his phone. But then Martha was there, blocking his view. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I saw her laugh and gesture towards me, probably explaining away my behavior as some kind of joke or misunderstanding. The trucker hesitated, looking between Martha and me. I redoubled my efforts, silently pleading with him to understand, to help me. But in the end, he just shook his head and continued towards the store. My last hope walked away, leaving me alone with my captor once more. Martha got back in the car, her face a mask of fury. "I warned you, Lily," she hissed, brandishing the device she'd threatened me with earlier. "I didn't want to do this, but you've left me no choice." As she pressed the button, I heard the hiss of gas being released. The world began to spin, Martha's angry face blurring before my eyes. "No," I mumbled, fighting against the encroaching darkness. "Please." But it was no use. As consciousness slipped away, I was left with one terrifying thought. When I woke up, where would I be? And what horrors awaited me there? The last thing I heard before succumbing to the darkness was Martha's voice, sickeningly sweet once more. "Sleep tight, my dear Lily. When you wake up, we'll be home." And with that, I slipped into oblivion, my fate uncertain, and my future in the hands of a mad woman. Consciousness returned slowly, like wading through a thick fog. My head pounded, and my mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. As I blinked away the bleariness, panic set in as I realized I was no longer in Martha's car. I was lying on a small, hard bed in a dimly lit room. The air was musty, with a faint smell of pine and damp earth. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out rough wooden walls and a single, small window with heavy curtains drawn shut. "Where am I?" I mumbled, my voice hoarse and unfamiliar to my own ears. "You're home, sweetheart." Martha's voice came from somewhere to my left, making me jump. She was sitting in a rocking chair in the corner of the room, watching me with an unsettling smile. "How are you feeling?" I tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced me back down. What did you do to me?" Martha's smile faltered slightly. "Now, Lily, you know that was your own fault. If you had behaved at the gas station, I wouldn't have had to use the sleeping gas, but don't worry. The effects will wear off soon." As the fog in my mind began to clear, the memories came rushing back. The ride, the gas station, my failed attempt at getting help. Tears welled up in my eyes as the reality of my situation hit me anew. "Please," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Please let me go home. My real home." Martha's expression hardened. "This is your real home now, Lily. The sooner you accept that, the happier you'll be." She stood up, smoothing down her dress. "Now let's get you up and dressed. There's someone I want you to meet." She moved to a small dresser and pulled out some clothes. "Here," she said, tossing them onto the bed. "Put these on. I'll be back in 5 minutes." As soon as the door closed behind her, I forced myself to sit up, ignoring the dizziness. I had to find a way out. I stumbled to the window, yanking open the curtains. My heart sank as I took in the view. Dense forest surrounded the cabin as far as I could see. Even if I could get out, where would I go? With shaking hands, I changed into the clothes Martha had left. A simple blue dress and white sneakers. They fit perfectly, which only added to my unease. How long had she been planning this? True to her word, Martha returned 5 minutes later. "Oh, don't you look lovely?" she cooed, reaching out to smooth my hair. I flinched away from her touch. "Come along now, dear. It's time for you to meet the others." Others? My heart raced as Martha led me out of the room and down a narrow hallway. The cabin was larger than I'd initially thought, with several closed doors lining the corridor. As we walked, I could hear muffled sounds coming from behind some of them. Quiet sobs, whispered conversations. We entered what appeared to be a living room. 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, sat on mismatched furniture, their eyes wide with fear and curiosity as they looked at me. "Everyone," Martha announced cheerfully. "This is Lily. She's joining our family today. Lily, meet Emma, Tyler, and Sophie." I stood frozen, shock paralyzing me as I took in the scene. Emma, the oldest-looking girl, gave me a sad smile. She couldn't have been more than 14. Tyler, a boy of maybe 10, avoided my gaze, picking at a loose thread on his shirt. And Sophie, who looked no older than 7, clutched a worn teddy bear to her chest, her lower lip trembling. "Hi," I managed to stammer out, my mind reeling. These kids, were they all kidnapped like me? "Now, Lily," Martha said, her voice taking on a warning tone. "I expect you to be a good influence on the younger ones. You're the oldest now, so you'll have some responsibilities. Understood?" I nodded numbly, unable to form words. Martha beamed, apparently taking my silence for acceptance. "Wonderful. Now why don't you all get to know each other while I prepare lunch?" With that, she bustled off to what I assumed was the kitchen, leaving me alone with the other children. As soon as Martha was out of earshot, Emma spoke up. "How long have you been here?" she asked in a hushed voice. I just woke up," I replied, my voice shaking. "How long have you all been here?" Emma's eyes clouded with pain. "I've been here the longest, almost a year, I think. Tyler's been here about 6 months, and Sophie..." She trailed off, glancing at the youngest girl who had started to cry silently. I felt sick. A year? These kids had been trapped here for months, possibly even years. "Has anyone ever tried to escape?" I whispered, glancing nervously towards the kitchen. Tyler spoke up for the first time. his voice barely audible. "Don't even think about it. The last girl who tried—" He shuddered, unable to finish the sentence. "What?" I pressed, dread filling my stomach. "What happened to her?" Emma shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "We don't know. Martha took her away and we never saw her again. She said it was because Sarah was ungrateful and didn't appreciate her new family." Sarah? The name Martha had mentioned in the car. My mind raced, trying to piece together the horrifying puzzle. Before I could ask any more questions, Martha's voice rang out from the kitchen. "Children, lunch is ready." We filed into the small dining room, taking seats around a worn wooden table. Martha served us bowls of soup and thick slices of bread. Despite my churning stomach, the smell made my mouth water. How long had it been since I'd eaten? "Eat up, everyone," Martha said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "We need to keep our strength up. After lunch, we'll start Lily's orientation." As we ate in tense silence, I couldn't help but notice how Martha watched us, her eyes gleaming with a possessive pride that made my skin crawl. This wasn't a family. It was a twisted parody of one, born from the mind of a deeply disturbed woman. After lunch, Martha led me on a tour of the cabin. She showed me the bathroom we would share, the small library filled with outdated books, and the locked door that led to her private quarters. "This door stays locked at all times," she said, her voice stern. "If I ever catch any of you trying to get in here, the consequences will be severe. Do you understand?" I nodded, my mind already working on ways to get past that lock. There had to be something in there. Keys, a phone, anything that could help us escape. As the tour concluded, Martha's demeanor softened again. "I know this is all very new and scary for you, Lily," she said, reaching out to cup my cheek. I forced myself not to pull away, remembering Tyler's warning. "But you'll see. We're going to be so happy together. All of us." That night, as I lay in my small bed, listening to Sophie's quiet sobs from the next room, I made a silent vow. I would find a way out of here, not just for myself, but for all of us. Whatever it took, however long it took, I would make sure we all got back to our real families. But as I drifted off into an uneasy sleep, Martha's words echoed in my mind. "You're mine now, Lily. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the voice. I wouldn't accept it. I couldn't. Because the moment I did, the moment I gave up hope, would be the moment Martha truly won. And I refused to let that happen. No matter what horrors awaited us in this cabin, no matter what twisted games Martha had in store, I would stay strong. For Emma, for Tyler, for Sophie, and for myself. Tomorrow, I decided, the real fight would begin. Tomorrow, I would start planning our escape from this cabin of horrors. Days blurred into weeks as I adjusted to the cruel routine of our captivity. Every morning, Martha would wake us at dawn, her sickeningly cheerful voice echoing through the cabin. "Rise and shine, my darlings. It's a beautiful day in our little paradise." Paradise. The word made me want to scream. This particular morning, I dragged myself out of bed, wincing as my feet hit the cold wooden floor. My body ached from the endless chores Martha assigned us. Cooking, cleaning, gardening, anything to keep us busy and compliant. As I dressed in the plain clothes Martha provided, I caught a glimpse of myself in the small mirror above my dresser. I barely recognized the girl staring back at me. My once vibrant eyes were now dull and shadowed, my cheeks hollow from stress and inadequate nutrition. But beneath the exhaustion, a spark of defiance still burned. I made my way to the kitchen, where Emma was already preparing breakfast under Martha's watchful eye. "Good morning, Lily," Martha chirped. "I hope you slept well. We have a busy day ahead of us." I forced a smile, my stomach churning at her false cheerfulness. "Good morning, Martha." Emma shot me a sympathetic glance as I joined her at the stove. We worked in silence, the sizzle of bacon and the scrape of the spatula the only sounds in the tense kitchen. As we set the table, Tyler and Sophie shuffled in, both looking as worn down as I felt. Sophie's eyes were red-rimmed from crying, a sight that had become all too common. Martha clapped her hands, beaming at us. "All right, my loves, let's say grace before we eat." We bowed our heads obediently, but as Martha droned on about blessings and family, I felt a small hand slip into mine under the table. I squeezed Sophie's fingers gently, a silent promise that I hadn't forgotten my vow to get us out of here. After breakfast, Martha announced the day's tasks. "Emma and Tyler, you'll be working in the garden today. Lily, you'll help me with some sewing projects. And Sophie, sweetheart, you'll be doing your lessons in the library." As the others dispersed, I followed Martha to the living room, where she had set up a sewing machine. "We're making new curtains for the bedrooms," she explained, laying out fabric. "Isn't this exciting, Lily? It'll make the room so much cozier." I bit back a retort. Cozier prisons were still prisons. Instead, I nodded and took a seat at the machine. As we worked, Martha chattered away about her plans for us, her perfect little family. I half listened, my mind wandering to thoughts of escape. In the weeks since my arrival, I'd been carefully observing, looking for weaknesses in Martha's system. "Lily? Are you listening to me?" Martha's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. I startled, nearly pricking my finger on the needle. "Sorry, I was just concentrating on the stitching." Martha's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but she seemed to accept my excuse. "As I was saying, I think we should have a special dinner this weekend to celebrate your 1-month anniversary with us. Wouldn't that be lovely?" The thought made me sick, but I forced a smile. "That sounds nice, Martha." As the day wore on, I found myself longing for the company of the other children. Despite the horror of our situation, we had formed a tight bond, finding solace in each other's presence. That night, after Martha had locked us in our rooms, I heard a soft tapping on the wall. 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. Our secret code. I pressed my ear to the wall, listening intently as Emma's muffled voice came through. "Lily? Are you awake?" "Yeah," I whispered back. "Is everything okay?" There was a pause before Emma replied, her voice trembling slightly. I think Martha's planning something. I overheard her on the phone earlier. She was talking about expanding the family." My blood ran cold. "You mean—" "I think she's going to kidnap someone else," Emma confirmed, her voice breaking. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Another innocent child, torn from their family, forced into this nightmare. We had to do something. "We need to step up our plans," I whispered urgently. "We can't let this happen to anyone else." Over the past weeks, we had been cautiously planning, looking for any opportunity to escape or get a message out. But Martha was vigilant and the cabin was isolated. Our attempts had been frustratingly futile so far. "But how?" Emma's voice was tinged with despair. "We've tried everything." I closed my eyes, thinking furiously. "Not everything. Remember that loose floorboard in the library? I think I can pry it up when Martha's not looking. Maybe there's something under there we can use." "It's risky," Emma warned. "I know," I replied, "but we have to try, for whoever Martha's planning to take next." We fell silent as footsteps approached, Martha making her nightly rounds. Once the sound faded, Emma whispered a quick goodnight, and silence fell over the cabin once more. Sleep eluded me that night as I tossed and turned, my mind racing with plans and fears. When dawn finally broke, I was exhausted but determined. At breakfast, I caught the eyes of the others trying to convey my resolve. They must have sensed something because they seemed to sit up straighter, a glimmer of hope in their tired eyes. As we cleared the table, I managed to whisper to Tyler, "Library, loose floorboard. Watch for a chance." He gave an almost imperceptible nod, his young face set with determination beyond his years. The morning dragged on, each of us hyper-aware of Martha's movements, waiting for an opportunity. It came just before lunch when Martha announced she needed to make a quick trip to the root cellar for supplies. "Lily, dear, would you start preparing lunch?" "I'll be back in a jiffy," she said, heading for the door. My heart raced. This was our chance. "Of course, Martha," I replied, keeping my voice steady. As soon as the door closed behind her, we sprang into action. Emma and Sophie kept watch, while Tyler and I raced to the library. "Here," Tyler whispered, pointing to a board near the corner. Together we pried it up, our fingers scraping against the rough wood. Beneath the board was a small space filled with dust and cobwebs, and there, nestled in the darkness, was a cell phone. My hands shook as I reached for it. An old model, probably forgotten by a previous owner of the cabin. Would it even work? "Hurry!" Emma's urgent whisper came from the hallway. "I think I hear her coming back." With trembling fingers, I pressed the power button. Nothing happened. "No, no, no," I muttered, frantically pressing the button again and again. Suddenly, the screen flickered to life. A low battery symbol flashed, but it was on. We had a working phone. "She's coming!" Sophie's panicked voice drifted from the kitchen. Quickly, I memorized the phone number, then shut it off and shoved it back under the floorboard. Tyler and I replaced the board just as Martha's footsteps approached the library. We scrambled back to the kitchen, trying to look busy as Martha entered carrying a basket of vegetables. "My, you all look flushed," she remarked, eyeing us suspiciously. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, Martha," I said, forcing a smile. "We were just excited about helping with lunch." She seemed to accept this, her face softening. "Oh, how wonderful. I do love seeing you all so eager to contribute to our family." As we prepared lunch, I caught Emma's eye. A silent message passed between us. We had a lifeline now, a potential way out. But we'd have to be careful, patient. One wrong move and Martha could take everything away. That night, as I lay in bed, the phone number burned in my memory, a beacon of hope in the darkness. We weren't powerless anymore. We had a chance. I closed my eyes, allowing myself to imagine freedom for the first time in weeks. The faces of my parents, my friends, my old life flashed before me. "Soon," I whispered into the quiet room. "We're coming home soon." But even as hope surged within me, a nagging fear lingered. What if the phone didn't work when we needed it? What if Martha caught us? What if our families had given up on us? I pushed the doubts aside. We had to try. For Emma, for Tyler, for Sophie. For the unknown child Martha was planning to snatch next. And for ourselves. Tomorrow, I decided, we would start planning our call for help. Tomorrow, we would take the first real step towards freedom. As I drifted off to sleep, I held on to that spark of defiance, that burning desire for freedom. It was all we had left, and I was determined not to let it die out. In this cabin of horrors, surrounded by fear and despair, we had found something powerful: solidarity, and with it, the strength to fight back. The old cell phone felt like a ticking time bomb in my trembling hands. We had waited for days, carefully planning, watching Martha's routines, looking for the perfect moment. And now, huddled in the tiny space between the back of the cabin and the dense forest, our moment had finally come. "Hurry, Lily," Emma whispered urgently, her eyes darting back and forth, scanning for any sign of Martha. "We don't have much time." I nodded, my fingers shaking as I punched in 911. The phone felt alien after weeks without technology, and I prayed silently that it would work. As it began to ring, my heart pounded so loudly I was sure Martha would hear it even from inside the cabin. 911, what's your emergency?" The operator's calm voice was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in weeks. "Please help us," I whispered frantically. "We've been kidnapped. We're being held in a cabin in the woods. I don't know exactly where we are, but..." Suddenly the line went dead. The ancient phone's battery had given out. "No!" I gasped, frantically pressing buttons. "No! No! No!" "Did it work?" Tyler asked, his young face etched with worry. "Did they hear you?" I looked at the frightened faces around me, Emma, Tyler, and little Sophie, all pinning their hopes on this call. I couldn't bear to crush that hope entirely. I think so, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. They heard us. They'll send help. Emma's brow furrowed. But how will they find us? We don't even know where we are. Before I could respond, a blood-curdling scream shattered the quiet of the forest. Martha's voice filled with rage and panic. "Where are you? Come back here right now!" Terror gripped us. We had been discovered. "Run!" I hissed, grabbing Sophie's hand. "Into the forest! Now!" We plunged into the thick undergrowth, branches whipping our faces, roots threatening to trip us at every step. Behind us, we could hear Martha crashing through the woods, her voice growing more frantic and enraged with each passing second. "You can't leave me! I'm your mother! I love you!" Her words sent chills down my spine, spurring me to run faster. Sophie stumbled beside me, her little legs struggling to keep up. I can't run anymore," she sobbed. Without hesitation, I scooped her up, ignoring the protest of my aching muscles. "It's okay, Sophie. I've got you. Just hold on tight." We ran for what felt like hours, the dense forest disorienting us, every tree looking the same as the last. The sound of Martha's pursuit had faded, but fear kept us moving forward. Finally, we stumbled into a small clearing, all of us gasping for breath. I set Sophie down gently, my arms trembling from the exertion. Do you think we lost her?" Tyler panted, bent over with his hands on his knees. Emma shook her head, her face pale with fear. "I don't know, but we can't stop. We have to keep going." But as we prepared to set off again, a new sound froze us in our tracks. Barking. The unmistakable sound of search dogs. "No," I whispered, despair washing over me. She couldn't have, but of course she could. Martha, in her twisted obsession, had prepared for every contingency, including our escape. The barking grew louder, accompanied by shouts, men's voices unfamiliar and gruff calling out as they searched. "Over here! I think I heard something!" Panic seized us. We were trapped, with nowhere left to run. "What do we do?" Sophie whimpered, clinging to my leg. I looked at Emma, seeing my own fear reflected in her eyes. We both knew the truth. There was nowhere left to go. We have to split up," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "They can't catch all of us. Whoever gets away, find help. Come back for the others." Emma nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of the decision. "I'll take Sophie," she said, reaching for the younger girl's hand. "Tyler, you go with Lily." As Sophie was pried away from me, her eyes wide with terror, I felt my heart breaking. "It's okay, sweetie," I tried to reassure her, even as tears streamed down my face. "Emma will take care of you. We'll see each other again soon, I promise." With one last, desperate hug, we separated. Emma and Sophie headed east while Tyler and I turned west. The sound of the dogs grew ever closer as we crashed through the underbrush. "Lily," Tyler gasped as we ran. "I'm scared." "I know," I panted. "Me too. But we have to keep going. We have to—" My words were cut short as a large figure suddenly loomed before us. A man, dressed in hunting gear, a leash in his hand connected to a large, snarling dog. Well, he drawled, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Look what we have here. Martha's going to be real happy to see you two." Tyler let out a strangled sob beside me. I stepped in front of him protectively, my mind racing for a way out of this nightmare. "Please," I begged. "You don't understand. We've been kidnapped. We need help." The man's smile only widened. "Oh, I understand just fine, little lady. Martha told us all about you, how you're confused, how you don't know what's best for you. But don't worry, we're going to take you home now." As he reached for us, I made a split-second decision. "Tyler, run!" I shouted, launching myself at the man. I caught him off guard, my desperation lending me strength I didn't know I had. We tumbled to the ground, the dog barking furiously beside us. I heard Tyler's footsteps fading as he fled. but my victory was short-lived. The man quickly overpowered me, pinning me to the forest floor. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that," he grunted, twisting my arms behind my back. "But it's time to go home now." As he hauled me to my feet, I saw other men emerging from the trees, each leading a dog. And there, in the center of them all, stood Martha. Her eyes blazed with a mixture of fury and what she probably thought was love. "Oh, Lily," she said, her voice trembling. "How could you do this to me? To our family?" I spat at her feet, all pretense of compliance gone. "We're not your family. You kidnapped us. You're sick, and you need help." Martha's face contorted with rage. She strode forward and slapped me hard across the face. "Ungrateful child, after everything I've done for you." As stars danced before my eyes, I saw movement behind Martha. My heart sank as I recognized Emma and Sophie, both held firmly by other men. There was no sign of Tyler. "Take them back to the cabin," Martha ordered, her voice cold. "And find the boy. He couldn't have gotten far." As we were marched back through the forest, I caught Emma's eye. The look we shared was one of utter defeat. We had failed. Our brief taste of freedom had been snatched away, leaving only the bitter ashes of despair. Back at the cabin, Martha's punishment was swift and severe. We were separated, each locked in our rooms without food or water. Through the thin walls, I could hear Sophie's heartbreaking sobs and Emma's attempts to comfort her. Hours passed, maybe days. It was hard to tell in the darkness of my room. My throat burned with thirst. My stomach ached with hunger. But worse was the crushing weight of our failed escape. Finally, the door opened. Martha stood there, her face a mask of disappointed love. "Oh, Lily," she sighed. "Why did you have to make me do this? You know I only want what's best for you, for all of you." I said nothing, too weak and defeated to argue. Martha knelt beside my bed, stroking my hair in a perverse imitation of motherly affection. "But it's okay now. You're home, where you belong, and soon, your brother will be home too." A jolt of hope shot through me. "Tyler," I croaked. You didn't find him?" Martha's eyes hardened. "Not yet, but we will. And when we do, we'll be a complete family again. Won't that be wonderful?" As she left, locking the door behind her, I clung to that small spark of hope. Tyler was still out there. Maybe, just maybe, he had found help. Maybe rescue was still coming. But as the days wore on, hope became harder and harder to hold on to. Martha's control tightened, her watchful eye never leaving us. The carefree moments of solidarity we had once shared were gone, replaced by a tense, fearful silence. Yet in the quiet of the night, when Martha's footsteps had faded and the cabin creaked with the weight of its terrible secrets, I would press my ear to the wall. And there, in whispered conversations with Emma and Sophie, we kept our spirit of resistance alive. We had failed this time, yes, but we weren't broken. Not yet. And as long as we had each other, as long as Tyler was out there somewhere, we would keep fighting. We would find a way to escape this cabin of horrors, to reclaim our lives and our freedom. No matter what it took, no matter how long it took, we would not give up. For in giving up, we would truly become what Martha wanted, broken, compliant dolls in her twisted fantasy of family. And that, I vowed in the darkness of my room, was something I would never, ever allow to happen. The days following our failed escape attempt blurred together in a haze of fear and hopelessness. Martha's punishments had become more severe, her watchful eye more vigilant. The cabin, once merely a prison, now felt like a tomb. It was on a particularly gloomy afternoon when everything changed. I was in the kitchen, mechanically chopping vegetables for dinner, when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside. My heart leapt into my throat. Visitors were rare, and rarely good news. Martha bustled past me, smoothing her hair and straightening her dress. "Remember, Lily," she hissed, her fingers digging painfully into my arm. "We're a happy family. Understand?" I nodded mutely, my eyes fixed on the door. As it swung open, I nearly dropped the knife I was holding. A young man, probably in his early 20s, stepped inside. He was tall and lean, with Martha's eyes but a kinder face. "Aunt Martha!" he called out, his voice uncertain. Martha's entire demeanor changed in an instant. Her grip on my arm loosened as she rushed forward, enveloping the newcomer in a hug. "Tom! Oh, what a wonderful surprise!" As Martha fussed over her nephew, his eyes met mine over her shoulder. I saw confusion there, then shock as he took in my appearance, and the fear I couldn't quite hide. "Aunt Martha," he said, gently extricating himself from her embrace. "I didn't know you had company." Martha's laugh was high and brittle. "Oh, Tom, don't be silly. This is Lily, my daughter, your cousin. Don't you remember me telling you about her?" Tom's brow furrowed. I don't think you did, Aunt Martha." For a moment, tension crackled in the air. Then Martha waved her hand dismissively. "Well, my memory isn't what it used to be. Lily, dear, why don't you go fetch Emma and Sophie? I'm sure they'd love to meet their cousin Tom." As I turned to leave, I caught Tom's eye again. This time I saw something that made my heart race. Suspicion. That night, as we all sat around the dinner table, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tensions. Martha chattered away, regaling Tom with stories of our happy family life, while the rest of us picked at our food in silence. "So, Tom," Martha said, her voice syrupy sweet, "how long can you stay with us? We have so much catching up to do." Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Actually, Aunt Martha, I can only stay for a couple of days. I have to get back to work." "Nonsense," Martha interrupted. "You must stay longer. I insist." As they argued, I felt a gentle kick under the table. Emma was looking at me intently, her eyes flicking towards Tom. I gave a tiny nod. We both sensed it. Tom could be our chance. Later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I heard a soft knock at my door. My heart pounded as I cautiously approached. "Who is it?" I whispered. "It's Tom," came the quiet reply. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, fear and hope warring within me. Finally, I cracked the door open. Tom stood there, his face pale in the dim hallway light. "Lily," he said, his voice low and urgent. "What's going on here? Who are you really?" I felt tears welling up in my eyes. This was our chance. Maybe our last chance. Taking a deep breath, I told him everything. The kidnapping, the months of captivity, our failed escape attempt. As I spoke, I watched Tom's face change from confusion to horror to determination. When I finished, Tom ran a hand through his hair, looking shaken. I had no idea. I knew Aunt Martha was eccentric, but this... God, Lily, I'm so sorry. "Will you help us?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. Tom nodded firmly. "Of course. We need to get you all out of here and contact the authorities. But we have to be careful. If Martha suspects anything..." I shuddered, remembering her rage after our escape attempt. "I know. We'll follow your lead." Over the next day, Tom played his part perfectly. He laughed at Martha's jokes, listened to her stories, all while secretly observing and planning. In stolen moments, he managed to speak with each of us, assuring us that help was coming. On the second night of Tom's visit, as Martha slept, we put our plan into action. Tom had managed to smuggle in a cell phone hidden in the lining of his jacket. We gathered in the living room, our voices barely above a whisper. "Okay," Tom said, pulling out the phone. "I'm going to call the police. Lily, can you tell them exactly where we are?" I nodded, my hands shaking as I took the phone. But just as I was about to dial, we heard a creak from upstairs. Martha was awake. "Quick," Emma hissed, "I hide." We scattered, Tom and I ducking behind the couch just as Martha's footsteps reached the stairs. "Hello?" Martha called out. "Is someone down there?" My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she would hear it. Beside me, Tom was tense, ready to spring into action if needed. Martha's footsteps drew closer. Children, are you out of bed? Just when I thought we were about to be discovered, Sophie's voice piped up from the hallway. I'm sorry, Martha. I had a bad dream. I was looking for you. There was a pause, then Martha's voice softened. Oh, my poor dear. Come, let's get you back to bed. We waited, hardly daring to breathe, until we heard their footsteps retreat upstairs. Only then did we emerge from our hiding spots. That was too close, Tom whispered. We need to do this now before she comes back. With trembling fingers, I dialed 911. The moment I heard the operator's voice, words began tumbling out of me in a desperate rush. Please help us. We've been kidnapped. We're being held in a cabin in the woods off Highway 43, about 20 miles past the Oak Ridge town limit. Please hurry. Stay calm, the operator assured me. We're dispatching units to your location now. Can you stay on the line? But before I could answer, a blood-curdling scream split the air. Martha stood at the foot of the stairs, her face contorted with rage. You ungrateful brats, she shrieked. After everything I've done for you. What happened next was a blur of chaos. Martha lunged forward, but Tom intercepted her, grappling with his aunt as she clawed and bit like a wild animal. Run! Tom shouted at us. Get out of here! Go! We didn't need to be told twice. Emma scooped up Sophie, and we bolted for the door. But Martha, with strength born of madness, broke free from Tom and grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. You're not going anywhere, she snarled. You're mine, all of you. I struggled against her grip, panic rising in my throat. This couldn't be happening. Not when we were so close to freedom. Suddenly, Martha's grip loosened. Tom had tackled her from behind, pinning her to the ground. Go, he yelled again. I've got her. Run. This time we didn't hesitate. We burst out of the cabin and into the cool night air. The forest loomed dark and forbidding before us, but anything was better than going back inside. We ran blindly through the trees, branches whipping our faces, roots threatening to trip us at every step. Behind us, we could still hear Martha's enraged screams echoing through the night. Where do we go? Emma gasped as we ran. The highway, I panted. We need to get to the highway. The police will be coming from there. We pushed on, our lungs burning, our legs aching. Sophie was crying, her arms wrapped tightly around Emma's neck. But we didn't stop. We couldn't stop. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, we burst out of the tree line. The highway stretched before us, dark and empty in the night. Look, Sophie cried, pointing down the road. In the distance, we could see flashing lights approaching fast. Relief flooded through me, so intense it made my knees weak. We made it, I whispered. We're free. As the police cars screeched to a halt in front of us, as officers jumped out with guns drawn and questions flying, the reality of our situation began to sink in. We were safe. We were finally safe. But as I turned to look back at the dark forest behind us, my heart clenched with worry. Tom was still back there, still fighting to give us this chance at freedom. Please, I begged one of the officers. There's still someone back there, in the cabin. He helped us escape. You have to help him. The officer nodded, speaking rapidly into his radio. More cars were coming, he assured us. They would find Tom and Martha. As we were ushered into the back of a police car, blankets wrapped around our shoulders, I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me. Relief, joy, fear, worry, all swirling together in a dizzying cocktail. We had made it out. We were free. But our ordeal wasn't over yet. There would be questions to answer, statements to give, families to reunite with. And somewhere back in that dark forest, Tom was still fighting for us. As the police car pulled away, carrying us towards safety and an uncertain future, I made a silent vow. We would make sure Tom was okay. We would make sure Martha faced justice for what she'd done. And we would never, ever take our freedom for granted again. The cabin of horrors was behind us now, but its shadow would linger for a long time to come. This was not the end of our story, but the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter of healing, of rebuilding, of reclaiming the lives that had been stolen from us. And whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Because if our time in captivity had taught us anything, it was the power of solidarity. We had survived Martha's twisted version of family. Now it was time to return to our real ones. The police car's interior felt surreal after months in Martha's cabin. The leather seats, the smell of coffee and stale donuts, the crackle of the radio. It was all so normal, yet so foreign. Emma sat beside me, her arms still wrapped protectively around Sophie, who had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep. Officer Jenkins, a kind-faced woman in her 40s, kept glancing at us in the rearview mirror. "You're safe now," she said softly. "We're taking you to the hospital to get checked out, okay?" I nodded numbly, my mind still reeling from the night's events. But one thought kept pushing its way to the forefront. "What about Tom?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "And Tyler? Have you found them?" Jenkins' expression tightened slightly. "We've got units searching the area now. We'll find them, don't worry." But I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. I turned to look out the window, watching the dark forest roll by. Somewhere out there, Tom was still fighting for us. And Tyler, God, Tyler had been out there alone for days. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. "All units, we have a situation at the cabin. Suspect is armed and holding a hostage. Repeat, suspect is armed and holding a hostage." My heart leapt into my throat. "Tom," I whispered, exchanging a horrified look with Emma. Jenkins immediately pulled the car over, speaking rapidly into her radio. I could only catch snippets of the conversation, but it was enough to send chills down my spine. Martha had a gun. She was threatening to kill Tom if the police didn't back off. "Please," I begged, leaning forward in my seat. "You have to let us help. We know Martha. Maybe we can talk to her, calm her down." Jenkins shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not. You've been through enough already. We have trained negotiators on the way. The best thing you can do is stay here and stay safe." But as she turned back to the radio, I caught Emma's eye. We didn't need words to communicate. We both knew we couldn't just sit here while Tom's life was in danger. Not after everything he'd done for us. As Jenkins was distracted with the radio chatter, I slowly, silently opened the car door. Emma followed suit, carefully maneuvering Sophie out without waking her. We slipped out of the car and into the darkness of the forest before Jenkins even realized what was happening. "We're crazy," Emma whispered as we stumbled through the underbrush. "You know that, right?" I nodded, my heart pounding. "Probably, but we can't leave Tom. We owe him everything." We made our way back towards the cabin, guided by the distant flashing lights of police cars. As we got closer, we could hear raised voices, the crackle of megaphones, the thrum of a helicopter overhead. Crouching behind a large oak tree, we finally got a clear view of the cabin. It was surrounded by police cars, their headlights illuminating the scene in harsh relief. And there, on the porch, stood Martha. She had one arm wrapped around Tom's neck, the other holding a pistol to his head. "Stay back!" she screamed, her voice shrill and unhinged. "Stay back or I'll kill him, I swear I will." Tom's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear, but he remained calm. "Aunt Martha," he said, his voice steady despite the gun at his temple. "Please, you don't want to do this. Just let me go and we can talk about this." Martha's laugh was high and hysterical. "Talk? There's nothing to talk about. You betrayed me, Tom. You tried to take my children away." "They're not your children," Tom replied gently. "You know that deep down. They have families who love them, who miss them. Please, Aunt Martha, it's time to let them go." For a moment, Martha's grip seemed to loosen. I held my breath, hoping against hope that Tom had gotten through to her. But then her face hardened once more. "No," she snarled. "No, they're mine. And if I can't have them, no one will." She raised the gun, aiming it at the police cars. "Where are they?" she screamed. "Where are my children? Bring them to me now, or I start shooting." I felt Emma tense beside me. We both knew what we had to do, as terrifying as it was. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out from behind the tree. "We're here, Martha," I called out, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to keep it steady. Martha's head whipped around, her eyes wild as they landed on us. "Lily? Emma? Oh, my darlings, you came back to me." I took a cautious step forward, my hands raised. "Yes, Martha, we're here. But you need to let Tom go. Please." For a moment, Martha looked confused, as if she'd forgotten she was holding Tom at gunpoint. Then her grip tightened once more. "No, he tried to take you away from me. He has to be punished." "Martha," Emma said, her voice gentle as she stepped up beside me. "We know you think you're protecting us, but this isn't the way. Please put the gun down, let Tom go, we can talk about this." Martha's eyes darted between us, the gun in her hand, trembling. I could see the conflict on her face, the madness warring with whatever shred of sanity she had left. You won't leave me?" she asked, her voice suddenly small and vulnerable. "You promise?" My heart ached at the broken woman before us. Despite everything she'd done, in this moment, I could see the pain and loneliness that had driven her to such extremes. "We won't leave you, Martha," I said softly. "But you have to let Tom go. You have to put the gun down. Can you do that for us?" For a long, tense moment, no one moved. The only sound was the whir of the helicopter overhead and the nervous shuffling of the police officers around us. Then slowly Martha lowered the gun. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." As soon as the gun was no longer pointed at Tom, the police swarmed the porch. In a matter of seconds, Martha was disarmed and in handcuffs, and Tom was being led to safety. The adrenaline that had been keeping me going suddenly drained away, leaving me weak-kneed and shaking. Emma caught me as I stumbled, her own legs none too steady. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it. It's over." But even as relief washed over me, I knew it wasn't truly over. Not yet. "Tyler," I said, looking up at the police officer who was approaching us. "Please, you have to find Tyler. He's still out there somewhere." The officer nodded gravely. "We've got search teams combing the area. We'll find him, I promise." As we were led away from the cabin, I couldn't help but look back. Martha was being placed in a police car, her eyes locked on us until the door closed. Despite everything, I felt a pang of pity for her. She was sick, damaged in ways I couldn't begin to understand. But she had still hurt us, had stolen months of our lives. The emotions warring inside me were too complex to untangle. At the makeshift command center at the edge of the forest, we were reunited with Sophie, who had woken up scared and confused in the police car. As we huddled together under shock blankets, giving our statements to patient officers, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Tom, looking exhausted but relieved. "Hey," he said softly. "I just wanted to say thank you. What you did back there, it was incredibly brave." I shook my head. "We should be thanking you. If it wasn't for you?" Tom smiled, squeezing my shoulder gently. "Let's just say we're even, okay?" As the night wore on, a flurry of activity erupted at the command center. I perked up, hope surging through me. Had they found Tyler? An officer hurried over to us, his face split in a wide grin. "We found him," he announced. "Tyler's alive. He's dehydrated and a bit scratched up, but he's okay. They're bringing him in now." The relief that flooded through me was so intense it brought tears to my eyes. Emma let out a sob beside me, and even Sophie managed a tired smile. Minutes later, a small figure emerged from the tree line, carried in the arms of a burly search and rescue officer. Tyler looked small and frail, his clothes torn and dirty, but his eyes were alert as they scanned the crowd. "Lily," he cried out when he saw us. "Emma, Sophie." As the officer set him down, Tyler ran to us, practically falling into our arms. We held each other tightly, our little family reunited at last. "I knew you'd find me," Tyler mumbled into my shoulder. "I knew you wouldn't give up." "Never," I whispered, stroking his matted hair. "We'd never give up on you." As the first light of dawn began to streak the sky, We were finally cleared to leave. Our parents had been notified and were on their way to the hospital to meet us. The nightmare was truly, finally, over. But as we climbed into the ambulance that would take us to the hospital, I knew that our journey was far from over. The physical ordeal might have ended, but the emotional scars would take far longer to heal. I looked at the faces around me, Emma, Tyler, Sophie, and Tom. We had been through hell together, had faced unimaginable horrors, but we had survived. We had fought back. And now, finally, we were free. As the ambulance pulled away, leaving the cabin and Martha behind, I allowed myself to think about the future for the first time in months. It was uncertain, yes, and undoubtedly challenging. But we were alive. We were together. And we were going home. The cabin of horrors was behind us now, fading into the distance like a bad dream. Ahead lay the long road to recovery, to reclaiming our lives and our futures. It wouldn't be easy, but as I looked at the survivors around me, I knew we wouldn't have to face it alone. We had endured Martha's twisted version of family. Now it was time to return to our real ones, to heal, to grow, and to live the lives that had almost been stolen from us. As the sun rose on a new day, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The hospital room was quiet save for the steady beep of monitors and the soft snores of my parents, who had fallen asleep in the uncomfortable chairs beside my bed. It had been 3 days since our rescue, but it felt like a lifetime. I stared at the ceiling, sleep eluding me, as it had every night since we'd been freed. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Martha's face, heard her voice, felt the suffocating walls of that cabin closing in on me. A soft knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. A nurse poked her head in, her kind face lined with concern. "Lily, you have some visitors. Are you up for seeing them?" I nodded, grateful for any distraction from my own mind. The nurse stepped aside, and in walked Emma, Tyler, and Sophie, accompanied by a woman I recognized as the child psychologist who had been working with us. "Hey," Emma said softly, perching on the edge of my bed. "How are you feeling?" I tried to smile, but it felt forced. "I'm okay. How about you guys?" Tyler shrugged, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "The nightmares are pretty bad," he admitted. "But Dr. Patel says that's normal?" Dr. Patel, the psychologist, nodded encouragingly. "It is normal, Lily. All of you have been through a traumatic experience. It's going to take time to process everything." Sophie, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly burst into tears. "I want to go home," she sobbed. "I don't want to be here anymore." Emma pulled her into a hug, stroking her hair. "I know, sweetie. We'll go home soon. The doctors just need to make sure we're all okay first." As I watched them, a lump formed in my throat. We had been through hell together, had formed a bond that went beyond friendship. And now, we were about to be separated again, each returning to our own families, our own lives. "What happens now?" I asked, looking at Dr. Patel. "After we leave the hospital, I mean." Dr. Patel sat down, her face serious but kind. "Well, that's partly why I'm here today. We need to talk about the next steps in your recovery process. There will be more therapy sessions, both individual and group. And," she hesitated, glancing at each of us in turn, "there's also the matter of the trial." The word hung heavy in the air. Martha's trial. The thought of facing her again, of reliving everything in a courtroom full of strangers, made my stomach churn. "Do we have to?" Tyler asked, his voice small and scared. "Can't they just lock her up and throw away the key?" Dr. Patel sighed. "I know it's scary, but your testimonies will be crucial in making sure Martha faces justice for what she did. But don't worry. We'll be there to support you every step of the way." As we discussed the upcoming months, the therapy sessions, the police interviews, the trial preparations, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Relief at being free, fear of the future, anger at Martha for putting us through this, and a deep aching sadness for the innocence we had lost. Later that day, as my parents stepped out to get some coffee, I found myself alone with Emma. She was the only one who truly understood what I was feeling, having been there from the beginning. "Em," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared." She reached out and took my hand, squeezing it gently. "Me too, Lil. But we've got each other, right? We'll get through this together." I nodded, fighting back tears. I keep thinking about Martha. About how she looked when they took her away. She was so broken, Em. So lost. And I know it's crazy, but part of me feels sorry for her. Emma was quiet for a moment, her brow furrowed in thought. "I know what you mean," she said finally. "What she did was terrible, unforgivable even. But she's sick, Lily. Really sick. And in a way, that's its own kind of prison." We sat in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. The enormity of what we had been through and what still lay ahead felt overwhelming. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, therapy sessions, and police interviews. Slowly, we began to heal, physically at least. The emotional scars ran deeper, surfacing in unexpected moments. One night, about a month after our rescue, I woke up screaming from a particularly vivid nightmare. My mom rushed in, gathering me in her arms as I sobbed. "Shh, it's okay, baby," she murmured, rocking me gently. "You're safe now. You're home." Home. The word still felt strange sometimes, as if I couldn't quite believe it was real. As if at any moment I might blink and find myself back in that cabin. "Mom," I choked out between sobs. "I don't know if I can do this. The trial. I don't know if I can face her again." My mom pulled back, cupping my face in her hands. "Listen to me, Lily. You are the strongest, bravest person I know. You survived months of captivity. You helped save your friends. You can do this." Her words gave me strength, but the fear lingered. As the date of the trial approached, it grew stronger, threatening to overwhelm me. The night before we were due in court, I couldn't sleep. I paced my room, my mind racing with all the what-ifs. What if Martha somehow got free? What if no one believed us? What if I broke down on the stand? Unable to bear the confines of my room any longer, I slipped downstairs and out onto the back porch. The cool night air helped calm my nerves a little, but the knot of anxiety in my stomach remained. I don't know how long I sat there staring up at the stars before I heard the soft click of the door opening behind me. Couldn't sleep either, huh? It was my dad, a steaming mug of cocoa in each hand. I shook my head, accepting the mug he offered me. "I'm terrified, Dad," I admitted. "What if I mess up tomorrow? What if I can't do it?" My dad sat down beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Lily Pad," he said, using the nickname he hadn't called me by in years. "Do you remember when you were little and you were afraid of the dark?" I nodded, unsure where he was going with this. "Do you remember what I told you then?" A faint memory stirred. You said that bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared but doing the right thing anyway." Dad smiled, squeezing my shoulder. "That's right. And tomorrow, when you stand up in that courtroom, you'll be the bravest person there. Because you're scared, but you're doing it anyway. For yourself, for your friends, and for every other child Martha might have hurt if you hadn't stopped her." His words sank in, and I felt something shift inside me. The fear was still there, but alongside it now was a steely determination. I could do this. I had to do this. The next morning, as we pulled up to the courthouse, I saw Emma, Tyler, and Sophie arriving with their families. We gathered in a tight circle, drawing strength from each other's presence. "Ready?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. I took a deep breath, looking at each of their faces, my friends, my fellow survivors. "Ready," I replied. As we walked into the courthouse, surrounded by our families and supporters, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Whatever happened in that courtroom, we would face it together. We had survived Martha's cabin of horrors. We could survive this too. The heavy doors of the courtroom loomed before us. With one last shared look of determination, we stepped forward into the next chapter of our journey. The path to justice, to healing, to reclaiming our lives, started here. As we took our seats, I caught sight of Martha being led in, flanked by guards. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I saw a flicker of something in her gaze. Regret? Sorrow? Madness? I couldn't be sure. But as I turned away from her and towards the judge's bench, I realized it didn't matter. Martha's motivations, her mental state, her regrets, none of that changed what she had done. What mattered now was telling our story, ensuring she could never hurt anyone else, and beginning the long process of healing. The bailiff's voice rang out, calling the court to order. This was it, the moment of truth. As I stood to be sworn in, my legs shaky but my resolve firm, I silently repeated the mantra that had gotten me through the darkest days in that cabin. We are stronger than our fears. We are survivors, and we will not be silenced. With that thought firmly in mind, I raised my right hand and prepared to testify. The next chapter of our story was about to begin. The courtroom was silent as I took my place on the witness stand. The wood of the chair felt cold and hard beneath me, a stark contrast to the burning nervousness in my stomach. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room on me, but none more heavily than Martha's. She sat at the defense table, looking smaller and more frail than I remembered. Her eyes, once filled with a twisted sort of love, now seemed hollow and lost. For a moment, our gazes locked, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. Miss Thompson, the prosecutor's voice broke through my thoughts. Can you please tell the court in your own words what happened on the day you were abducted? I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly as I gripped the edge of the witness stand. I had just finished my shift at the diner, I began, my voice quavering. I missed the bus, so I started walking home. That's when Martha pulled up beside me. As I recounted the events of that fateful day and the months of captivity that followed, I felt as if I were reliving it all over again. The fear, the confusion, the desperate hope for rescue, it all came flooding back. She told us we were her family now, I said, my voice growing stronger as I spoke. She said our real families didn't love us, that she was the only one who truly cared for us. But it was all a lie. I described the conditions in the cabin, the punishments Martha would inflict when we disobeyed, the constant fear we lived under. As I spoke, I could hear muffled sobs from the gallery where our families sat. Miss Thompson, the prosecutor said gently, can you tell us about the escape attempt? I nodded, swallowing hard. We had been planning it for weeks. We thought we had a chance. But Martha, I faltered, the memory of that night still raw and painful. Take your time, the judge said, her voice kind. I took a shaky breath and continued. She caught us. She was so angry. I've never seen anyone so furious. She hurt us. Badly. And then she separated us, locked us in our rooms for days. As I spoke, I could see Martha shifting uncomfortably in her seat, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. And how did you finally escape? The prosecutor asked. It was Tom, I said, my voice growing stronger as I recounted the final days of our captivity. Martha's nephew. He realized something was wrong and helped us get out. He risked his life for us. When I finished my testimony, I felt drained, as if I'd run a marathon. But there was also a sense of relief, of a weight being lifted. I had told our story. I had spoken our truth. As I stepped down from the witness stand, my legs felt weak. But as I passed the defense table, I heard Martha's voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, Lily, I'm so sorry. I paused for a moment, looking at the broken woman before me. Part of me wanted to scream at her to make her feel a fraction of the pain she had caused us. But another part, a part I was still struggling to understand, felt a twinge of pity. I know, I said softly, before continuing to my seat. The trial continued for days, with Emma, Tyler, and Sophie each taking their turn on the stand. Tom testified as well, recounting how he had discovered Martha's secret and helped us escape. Through it all, we supported each other, drawing strength from our shared experience. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the jury returned with their verdict. On the charges of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and child endangerment, we find the defendant, Martha Kendrick, guilty on all counts. A collective sigh of relief swept through the courtroom. It was over. Martha would face justice for what she had done to us. As the judge prepared to announce the sentence, Martha's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client wishes to address the court." The judge nodded, and Martha slowly rose to her feet. She turned to face us, her eyes brimming with tears. I know that nothing I can say will ever make up for what I've done," she began, her voice trembling. "I took your childhoods, your sense of safety, your trust. I can never give those back to you, but I want you to know that I am truly, deeply sorry. I was sick. I am sick, but that's no excuse. What I did was unforgivable, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to atone for it." As she spoke, I felt a tumult of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite name. I looked at Emma, Tyler, and Sophie, seeing my own conflicted feelings reflected in their faces. The judge's voice cut through the heavy silence that followed Martha's statement. "Martha Kendrick, for your crimes against these children, I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Additionally, you will undergo extensive psychiatric treatment as part of your incarceration." As Martha was led away, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. The trial was over. Justice had been served, but the journey was far from over. In the days and weeks that followed, we all struggled to adjust to our new normal. The nightmares continued, the fear and anxiety lingering like unwelcome guests. But slowly, with the help of our families, our therapists, and each other, we began to heal. One sunny afternoon, about a month after the trial, we all met at a local park. It was the first time we had all been together outside of a courtroom or therapist's office since our rescue. As we sat on a picnic blanket, the sounds of children playing and birds singing around us, Emma broke the comfortable silence. "Do you guys ever think about her? About Martha?" Tyler nodded, picking at the grass beside him. "Sometimes. I have these dreams where she's not, crazy, where she's just a normal aunt and we're having a regular family picnic or something. Is that weird?" "No," Sophie said quietly. "I have dreams like that too. And then I wake up and remember everything, and it hurts all over again." I listened to them, feeling a mix of sadness and understanding. I think it's okay to have complicated feelings about her," I said slowly. "What she did was terrible, unforgivable even. But she was also sick. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it makes it harder to just hate her." Emma finished for me. We all nodded, a shared understanding passing between us. "You know," I said, looking at each of them in turn, "I've been thinking about doing something, about turning this experience into something, positive." They looked at me curiously, and I continued. "I was thinking about starting a support group for kids who've been through similar things, to let them know they're not alone, that there's hope for healing." Emma's face lit up. "Lily, that's an amazing idea. We could share our experiences, offer advice, and maybe prevent it from happening to other kids," Tyler added, his voice filled with determination. As we discussed the idea, I felt a warmth spreading through me. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly hopeful about the future. Later that evening, as I sat on my back porch watching the sunset, my mom joined me. "You seem different today," she observed, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "More at peace." I leaned into her embrace, feeling grateful for her unwavering support throughout this ordeal. "I think I am, Mom. I mean, I know I still have a long way to go, but I feel like I'm finally moving forward, you know? She kissed the top of my head. I'm so proud of you, Lily. You've shown such incredible strength and resilience. And this idea for a support group, it's wonderful. You're going to help so many people. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. The trauma of our captivity would always be a part of me, a dark chapter in my life story. But it didn't have to define me. I was more than a victim, more than a survivor. I was Lily Thompson, and I had a future to look forward to. The cabin of horrors was behind us now, fading into memory. Ahead lay a path of healing, of growth, of turning our pain into purpose. It wouldn't be easy, and there would undoubtedly be difficult days ahead. But as I sat there, surrounded by the love of my family and the enduring bond with my fellow survivors, I knew we would face whatever came next together. As the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, I made a silent promise to myself and to all the other children who had suffered similar fates. We would not be defined by what was done to us, but by how we chose to move forward. Our voices would be heard, our stories would be told, and in doing so, we would reclaim the power that had been taken from us. The night air was cool on my skin, a gentle reminder that I was here, I was free, and I was alive. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to truly start living again. The auditorium buzzed with nervous energy as I stood backstage, my heart pounding in my chest. 5 years had passed since our rescue from Martha's cabin, but moments like these still had the power to transport me back to that dark time. "You okay, Lil?" Emma's voice came from behind me, soft and concerned. I turned to face her, managing a shaky smile. "Yeah, just, pre-speech jitters." Emma nodded, understanding in her eyes. She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You've got this. Remember, your story has power. It can help people." I took a deep breath, centering myself. Emma was right. This was why we were here, why we had decided to speak out, to help others, to reclaim our narrative. The principal's voice echoed through the auditorium, introducing us. "And now please welcome Lily Thompson and Emma Carter, survivors and advocates here to speak about their experiences and the importance of child safety awareness." As we stepped onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding me, I was struck by how far we'd come. The scared, broken girls we once were now stood tall, ready to share our story with a new generation. I approached the microphone, my notes clutched tightly in my hand. As I looked out at the sea of young faces, I was reminded of why this was so important. 5 years ago, I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. I was just like many of you, a normal teenager with normal worries, homework, friends, what to wear to school. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. As I recounted our story, the abduction, the months of captivity, our eventual rescue, I could see the impact it was having on the audience. Some looked shocked, others tearful, but all were listening intently. "But our story doesn't end with our rescue," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "That was just the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter of healing, of reclaiming our lives and of turning our pain into purpose." Emma stepped forward then, taking over seamlessly. "We're here today not just to share our story, but to empower you, to teach you how to recognize the signs of potential danger, how to protect yourselves and each other." For the next hour, we talked about safety measures, warning signs, and the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right. We shared the resources that had helped us in our recovery, emphasizing that there was always hope, always a way forward. As we concluded our presentation, a young girl in the front row raised her hand. "Weren't you scared to talk about this, to relive it all?" I exchanged a glance with Emma before answering. "Yes, we were. We still are sometimes. But we've learned that our fear doesn't have to control us. By speaking out, by reclaiming our story, we take back the power that was taken from us." After the presentation, as we were packing up our materials, the principal approached us. "Thank you both so much for coming," she said, her eyes shining with emotion. Your bravery, your resilience, it's truly inspiring. We thanked her, the praise still feeling somewhat uncomfortable even after all this time. As we left the school, I felt the familiar mix of exhaustion and exhilaration that always followed these events. Ice cream? Emma suggested, a mischievous glint in her eye. It had become our post-presentation tradition, a small way of celebrating our continued healing. As we sat in the small ice cream parlor, savoring our sundaes, Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, a soft smile spreading across her face. Tyler, I guessed, and her blush confirmed it. He says hi, she said, quickly typing a response. He's sorry he couldn't make it to the presentation. His flight from New York got delayed. I nodded, a wave of fondness washing over me. Tyler, our youngest fellow survivor, had thrown himself into his studies after our rescue. Now, at just 20, he was already making waves in child psychology, determined to help other trauma survivors. And Sophie? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Emma's smile turned proud. Still acing all her classes. She's already talking about college applications, can you believe it? I shook my head in wonder. Sophie, who had been so young and fragile during our captivity, was now a vibrant, ambitious teenager. Her resilience never ceased to amaze me. As we finished our ice cream, my phone pinged with a notification. It was from my publisher confirming the release date for my memoir. Seeing it in writing sent a shiver down my spine. Equal parts excitement and trepidation. It's really happening, huh? Emma said, noticing my expression. I nodded, still staring at the message. Yeah. In 3 months, our story will be out there for everyone to read. Writing the memoir had been a grueling process, forcing me to confront memories and emotions I'd rather have left buried. But it had also been cathartic. A way of processing our experiences and hopefully reaching even more people who needed to hear our message. As we left the ice cream parlor, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. Do you ever wonder, Emma said suddenly, what our lives would be like if it hadn't happened? I considered her question carefully. It was something I'd thought about often over the years. Sometimes, I admitted. But then, I think about all the people we've helped. All the children who are safer because of our advocacy work. And I think, maybe this is exactly where we're meant to be. Emma nodded, understanding in her eyes. It's just, sometimes I feel guilty, for finding something positive in such a horrible experience. I stopped walking, turning to face her. Em, listen to me. What happened to us was terrible. It was traumatic and it was wrong. But the fact that we've managed to create something good out of it, that we found purpose and meaning, that's not something to feel guilty about. That's something to be proud of. She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. When did you get so wise, Lily Thompson? I laughed, linking my arm through hers as we continued walking. Oh, somewhere between the therapy sessions and the motivational speeches. As we neared Emma's apartment, a thought occurred to me. Hey, isn't your art show opening next week? Emma's face lit up. Yeah, it is. I still can't believe the gallery accepted my series. I bumped her shoulder playfully. Are you kidding? Your paintings are amazing. They're raw and honest and beautiful, just like you. Emma's art had become her own form of therapy, a way of expressing the emotions she couldn't put into words. Her series, titled Shadows and Light, was a powerful visual representation of our journey from trauma to healing. You'll be there, right? She asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, I assured her. As we said our goodbyes, I found myself reflecting on the day, on the past 5 years, on the journey that had brought us to this point. We had come so far from those terrified girls in Martha's cabin. We had reclaimed our lives, our voices, our power. But the path hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, moments of doubt, days when the weight of our past threatened to overwhelm us. I thought back to my college graduation, how I had frozen on stage, suddenly certain that Martha was in the audience waiting to snatch me away again. It had taken months of intensive therapy to work through that episode. I remembered Tyler's struggle with addiction in his late teens, how we had all rallied around him, supporting him through rehab and recovery. And Sophie's battle with an eating disorder, her way of trying to regain control over her body and her life. Yet through it all, we had persevered. We had leaned on each other, on our families, on the network of support we had built. We had turned our pain into purpose, our trauma into triumph. As I walked home in the fading light, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, another speaking engagement, more chapters to edit in my memoir, the ongoing work with our support group for trauma survivors. But I was ready to face it all. I thought about the young faces in the auditorium today, how they had listened to our story with such intensity. If even one of them walked away feeling more empowered, more aware, more prepared to protect themselves and others, then it was all worth it. Reaching my apartment, I paused at the door, taking in the quiet street, the soft glow of streetlights, the distant sound of traffic, simple everyday things that I had once thought I'd never experience again. As I stepped inside, my gaze fell on the framed photo on my entryway table. It was a picture of the four of us, me, Emma, Tyler, and Sophie, taken at a beach outing last summer. Our faces were sun-kissed and smiling, no hint of the darkness we had endured visible in our eyes. To anyone else, we might look like any group of friends enjoying a day out. But I knew the truth of what bound us together, the strength we had found in each other, the resilience that had brought us to this point. I touched the frame gently, a smile tugging at my lips. We were survivors, yes, but we were also so much more. We were advocates, friends, artists, students, professionals. We were living proof that it was possible to reclaim life after trauma, to find joy and purpose even in the aftermath of unimaginable pain. As I got ready for bed that night, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The scared girl from Martha's cabin was gone, replaced by a woman who had faced her demons and emerged stronger. A woman with purpose, with a voice, with a future. I thought about my upcoming book tour, about the countless people I would meet, the stories I would hear. I thought about Emma's art show, Tyler's research, Sophie's college dreams. I thought about all the lives we had touched and would continue to touch. And I realized with a sense of wonder and gratitude that we had done more than just survive. We had learned to thrive. As I drifted off to sleep, I held on to that feeling of hope and determination. Tomorrow was a new day, another opportunity to reclaim life, to make our voices heard, to turn our pain into purpose. The cabin of horrors was now nothing more than a distant memory, a chapter in our past that no longer held power over us. Ahead lay a future bright with possibility, a life reclaimed and lived to its fullest, and we were ready for it all.